After Barkley was selected with the second overall pick, it took quite some time until another running back was taken off the board, that being Rashad Penny with the 27th pick going to the Seahawks. Despite Penny being a first rounder, he still couldn't break into the starting lineup in his rookie year, spent the season backing up Chris Carson, Seattle's 7th round pick from the 2017 draft. Even with Penny failing to take over as the team starter, he still had a fair rookie year, picking up 419 yards and a pair of rushing touchdowns on the season.
Rashad Penny, and Penny inside the 5 will score.
It's Penny. And Penny, look at that move to the outside, and the rookie's gonna score!
He made his playoff debut that season in a wild card matchup against the Cowboys. Penny led the team on the ground with 29 yards on just 4 carries. You aren't going to win many games when that's the case. Chris Carson, on the other hand, was held to just 20 yards on 13 carries during that game, and the Seahawks were sent home with a 24-22 loss. Penny was on pace to best his rookie year in the 2019 season, even with Carson holding onto the team's starting spot. But sadly, his momentum came to a screeching halt when he suffered a torn ACL in the Week 14 matchup against the Rams. With this injury coming so late in the year, Penny not only had his 2019 campaign cut short, but was also sidelined for all but 3 games in the 2020 season, barely being able to contribute by the time he was back in Week 15. Now, it appeared as if his career was going to come to an end before it could really begin, but in the 2021 season, Penny had a bounce-back year that not a lot of people saw coming. Despite playing in only 10 games and starting in 6 of them, he finished the year with 749 yards and 6 touchdowns on the ground, setting career marks in both of those metrics.
Penny, Rashad Penny shoving defenders away, and Penny has a Seahawk touchdown. Clear path to the end zone, Rashad Penny, touchdown Seahawks.
He even led the league in yards per carry with 6.3. It seemed like things were finally looking up for the former first-round pick after overcoming a major hurdle in the ACL tear. He opened the 2022 season as Seattle's starting tailback, but was only able to appear in 5 games before his season came to a premature end due to a broken fibula. Seattle chose not to re-sign Penny in the offseason, deeming that his injury history made him too much of a risk to sign to a long-term deal. However, the Eagles took a chance on him and signed him to a 1-year deal. It appeared at the time of the signing that he was going to take over as the team's starter, but later in free agency, they traded for DeAndre Swift. Pair that with the fact that they had Kenneth Gainwell and Boston Scott, Penny was just lost in the mix and saw the field in only 3 games, finishing the year with just 11 touches for 33 yards on the ground and 1 catch for 5 yards through the air. This wound up being his final year in the league, ending his career with 1,951 yards and 13 touchdowns on the ground. With the 31st overall pick, the New England Patriots drafted Sony Michel. While he did begin the year as the team's backup, it only took him until week number 3 to get his first start. A very impressive feat for a rookie to accomplish, especially on a contending team like the Patriots. He did finish the regular season with 931 yards and 6 touchdowns on the ground.
Handoff here to Michel. Sony Michel with a stiff arm. Sideline. Touchdown. Number 46. Give it to Michel, and he will burst into the end zone.
He also made his postseason debut in the divisional round matchup against the Chargers, and he did not disappoint. Michel went off for 129 yards and 3 touchdowns, having arguably the best game of his entire career when the lights were the brightest.
Trying to get up into it.
First and goal, and the Patriots drive it the distance for the touchdown. Running it, Michel, untouched so far, dives for the pylon. Touchdown, New England.
He was the catalyst in New England's dominant 41-28 win. In the AFC Championship, they took on the Chiefs. Michel once again had a dominant day on the ground, rushing for 113 yards and a pair of touchdowns.
Michel powers in for the touchdown. Here's the handoff into the end zone. It's Sony Michel.
Covering up for an out-of-character 2-turnover day from Tom Brady. New England could not have won this game without Michel, only winning by a final score of 37-31. This win punched their ticket to the Super Bowl, where they took on the Rams. The game overall was a defensive battle, but Michel was still able to make a sizable impact, picking up 94 yards and the only touchdown of the game from either team.
Running it for the touchdown.
The Patriots took the game by a final score of 13-3, and Michel became a Super Bowl champ in only his rookie season. Coming off such a dominant tear in the playoffs, he was a no-brainer to be the Week 1 starter for the Patriots in the 2019 season. However, despite taking on this larger role, he posted nearly identical numbers to his rookie year, rushing for 912 yards and 7 touchdowns on 247 carries. New England did make a return to the playoffs with a wildcard round matchup against the Titans. While Michel led the Patriots on the ground, he was held in check to only 61 yards, and the Patriots were upset by a final score of 20-13, putting an early end to their year. In what went on to be his final season with the Patriots, Michel struggled with injuries, able to only play in 9 games. In his absence, Damian Harris proved himself as a more than capable back, and it made it very difficult for Michel because he was in a timeshare once he returned. In the offseason leading up to the 2021 season, he was traded to the Rams for a 6th round pick in the 2022 draft and a 4th round pick in the 2023 draft. In LA, he mainly served as a backup, starting in only 7 of the 17 games that he played in. The running back duo of Michel and Darrell Henderson proved to be very dangerous as the Rams earned a playoff berth where they took on the Arizona Cardinals in the wildcard round. Michel led the rushing efforts with 58 yards on the ground in a dominant 34-11 win. In the divisional round, they took on the reigning Super Bowl champs, the Tampa Bay Bucks. Michel was a non-factor in this game, receiving only 1 carry for 4 yards, but the Rams still were able to pull out a narrow 30-27 win. In the NFC Championship game, Michel struggled once again to just 16 yards on 10 carries. Even with this lack of production, LA pulled out another tight 20-17 win. This punched their ticket to the Super Bowl, where they took on the Cincinnati Bengals. Michel once again spent most of the game watching from the sidelines, picking up just 2 yards on his 2 carries, but for their 3rd straight game, the Rams proved that they had ice in their veins, coming up clutch with the game on the line and winning 23-20, giving Michel his 2nd Super Bowl win in only 4 years. With the Rams already featuring a very crowded running back room and Michel's level of play falling off as the season came to an end, they chose to release him. After briefly signing with the Dolphins in the 2022 season, Michel signed with the Chargers. In LA, he was exclusively utilized as a backup, coming off the bench in 10 games. He finished the year with 106 yards on 36 carries in what went on to be his final season in the league. He finished his career with 3,243 rushing yards and 20 total touchdowns. However, his dominant tear throughout the playoffs in his rookie year was a massive highlight in his career and cannot be forgotten. Moving on to our next running back, the Cleveland Browns selected Nick Chubb with the 35th overall pick. Chubb didn't take long to establish himself as the team's starting running back, earning the starting nod in 9 out of the 16 games that he played in during his rookie year. He came just 4 yards short of a 1,000-yard season, picking up 996 yards and 8 touchdowns on the ground.
For the goal line.
As Mayfield gets it into the hands of Chubb. His 3rd carry today. His first ball is a big one, and so is this one. Chubb takes it all the way. His 2nd touchdown.
With a full regular season as the team starter in 2019, Chubb quickly put the league on notice as one of the best running backs the NFL had to offer. He had an incredible breakout year in which he ran for 1,494 yards and 8 touchdowns.
Here's Chubb going to test that left side, right inside and into the end zone. Nick Chubb.
This earned him a spot in the Pro Bowl, a very impressive feat for a player only in their 2nd season. Following year, he was only able to see the field in 12 regular season games due to an MCL sprain that he suffered in Week 4 against the Cowboys. Despite this setback, he was still able to finish the year with over 1,000 yards and tie a career high with 12 rushing touchdowns.
Calling the plays for the Browns. First down, Cleveland. Chubb, touchdown.
Chubb again. There's a cutback.
And Chubb inside the 10. You're right about the cutback, and he took it all the way in for the touchdown.
This earned him another trip to the Pro Bowl. Along with this, Chubb played a huge role in ending Cleveland's nearly 2-decade-long playoff drought. He made his playoff debut in a wildcard matchup against the Steelers in an AFC North showdown. Chubb impacted the game both on the ground and through the air, picking up 76 rushing yards and catching 4 passes for 69 yards and a touchdown. In the shootout win, 48-37. In the divisional round, they took on the Chiefs. Chubb had a solid day on the ground, rushing for 69 yards, but it was not enough to lead his team to the AFC Championship as they fell by a final score of 22-17. Following season, he continued to stake his claim as one of the league's top talents at the running back position, recording 1,259 yards and 8 touchdowns on the ground.
Chubb has all kinds of room, and he can walk right into the end zone for the touchdown. touchdown.
earning his third consecutive trip to the Pro Bowl. Even with him sharing the backfield with Kareem Hunt for the past 2 seasons, Chubb continued to dominate opposing defenses whenever his number was called, and it was very clear that he was the alpha running back. In 2022, Chubb had the best season of his career. He set or tied career highs across the board with 1,525 rushing yards and 12 touchdowns on 302 carries, and he was the focal point of Cleveland's offense.
Now Hunt gets a breather. Here comes Nick Chubb. Chubb breaking tackles, and Chubb in for the Browns touchdown.
Hand off to Chubb. Chubb through the left side, inside the 20. Chubb's got the 10, 5, touchdown!
He made a 4th straight Pro Bowl appearance and was also named to the All-Pro second team for the first time in his career. The 2023 season was very rough for the now veteran running back though. In only the 2nd game of the year against the Steelers, he suffered a very disturbing knee injury that left him with a torn MCL and damage to his ACL. This unsurprisingly brought his year to a premature end before it could even really get started. He was forced to miss the team's incredible run to the playoffs, in which he undoubtedly would have played a huge role in. Due to the severity of the injury that he suffered in 2023, Chubb got a very late start to the 2024 season, rejoining the team in week number 7. He was able to appear in 8 games before he was once again struck by the injury bug, suffering a broken foot in week 15 against the Chiefs. It's going to be very interesting to see if Chubb is going to be able to return to form following his 2 very serious injuries in back-to-back seasons and having a very bad injury history with his knees in general. He currently sits at 6,843 yards and 51 touchdowns on the ground, along with 1,042 yards and 5 touchdowns through the air. Now we're going to move on to the 38th overall pick, where the Buccaneers selected Ronald Jones II. Despite being a 2nd-round pick, Jones struggled to carve out a role for himself in the Bucs offense in his rookie season, with both Jaquiz Rodgers and Peyton Barber receiving more carries than him. He was finally given his shot in the 2019 season, starting in 9 out of the 16 games that he played in. Jones made the most of this larger role, rushing for 724 yards and 6 touchdowns.
Ronald Jones with a touchdown for Tampa Bay at the Coliseum.
Along with this, he also proved himself as a real threat in the passing game, pulling in 31 passes for 309 yards, setting a career high in this metric. The 2020 season saw the Bucs acquire Tom Brady, making life a whole lot easier for Jones, as opposing defenses were much more focused on slowing down Tampa's elite passing attack. However, the team also acquired Leonard Fournette. Despite adding Fournette to the team, Jones was able to hold on to this starting spot until he was sidelined for 2 games after testing positive for COVID. He also put up career rushing records, setting highs in both yards and touchdowns with 978 and 7 respectively.
Touchdown, Ronald Jones.
Did against the Bears.
Handoff here, Jones. Touchdown.
Along with this, Jones had the league's longest rush that season with 98 yards.
Ronald Jones being chased from behind. Does Jones have enough? Still on his feet. Ronald Jones, 98-yard touchdown.
Tampa Bay made a trip to the postseason, but Jones did not see the field in the team's 31-23 win over the Washington football team. He made his playoff debut in the divisional round against the Saints, where he had a solid game, rushing for 62 yards on 13 carries, and Tampa Bay came out on top of that one 30-20. Next round, they took on the Green Bay Packers in the NFC Championship, but Jones was held in check to only 16 yards on 10 carries. Despite this, the Bucs were still able to escape with a 31-26 win, setting up their Super Bowl matchup against the Chiefs. Jones had a very solid bounce-back performance in this one, rushing for 61 yards in the dominant 31-9 win, and even though he was outtouched by Fournette in this one, he was still a key contributor. Following season, Jones saw a reduced role and mainly served as the team's backup, starting in only 3 out of the 16 games that he played in. Unsurprisingly, he took a step back statistically and suffered an injury in a Week 17 matchup against the Jets, which kept him sidelined for the playoffs. The writing was on the wall at this point in time that he didn't have much of a future with the Bucs, and as a result of this, he signed with the Chiefs for the 2022 season. Jones took a even bigger step back in Kansas City, seeing the field in only 6 games and receiving a total of 17 carries. During the team's playoff run, he only received 1 carry that he failed to pick up a yard on. Despite this, the Chiefs went on to win the Super Bowl, and Jones ended his time in the league with another ring in his collection. This wound up being his final season, and Jones finished his career with 2,244 yards and 19 rushing touchdowns, along with being a 2-time Super Bowl champion. With the 43rd overall pick, the Detroit Lions selected Kion Johnson. Johnson was able to win the starting spot just 3 weeks into his rookie year after turning heads of the coaching staff as a backup. Unfortunately, he went down with a knee injury in their Week 12 matchup against the Panthers. That would be the end of his season, and he finished 2018 with 641 yards and 3 touchdowns. The following season, he kept up a very consistent level of play. Despite this, the momentum that he had going for him came to a screeching halt when he suffered a torn MCL in their Week 7 matchup against the Vikings. Johnson was sidelined for 8 games before he made a return to action. He was eased back into action, but in the final week of the regular season, he did take over that starting role again. Something pretty embarrassing for the Lions that year was that Johnson led the team in rushing with only 403 yards. He started the 2020 season as Detroit's starting back, but after struggling for 46 yards and a touchdown in the first 2 games of the year, he spent the remainder of the season serving as a backup for Adrian Peterson and DeAndre Swift. With the Lions having a well-established group of running backs at this point in time, it was clear that Johnson was not going to get much of a chance to shine in Detroit. He was waived from the team. He wound up joining the 49ers for just 1 game in the 2021 season where he did not receive a single carry. Finished his time in the league totaling 1,225 yards and 8 touchdowns on the ground, along with catching 61 passes for 527 yards and 3 touchdowns. With the 59th overall pick, the Washington Redskins drafted Darius G. I remember Geis being very hyped up coming into the league, with many people predicting that he could be a force in the NFL. Sadly, Geis' career got off to a horrendous start, with him suffering a torn ACL in the first preseason game of his rookie year, which left him unable to see the field for the entirety of the season. 2019, he made his debut in the opening week of the season, but once again, Geis would have another hurdle to try to overcome as he suffered a torn meniscus in this matchup. He was placed on injured reserve, but ultimately made a return to action in Week 11 against the Jets. He was able to play in 3 more games following his return, but in Week 14 against the Packers, he went down with an MCL tear, putting an end to his season and his career. In the 5 games that he was able to suit up for, he started in 1 of them, rushed for 245 yards and a pair of touchdowns in his career. Geis was waived from Washington in the offseason after he was charged with domestic violence. While these charges were eventually dropped, he was still suspended for 6 games. He never wound up having to serve this suspension though, as another team never went on to sign him. Geis finished his disappointing career with just 245 yards and a pair of touchdowns on 42 carries, along with pulling in 7 passes for 79 yards and another touchdown. Talk about an unfortunate time in the NFL. This man just could not catch a break with those knees. Now we're going to move on to the 3rd round, where the Denver Broncos drafted Royce Freeman with the 71st overall pick. Freeman opened up his rookie season as the Broncos starter, but in week number 7 against the Cardinals, he suffered an ankle injury that kept him sidelined for 2 games. During his absence, Phillip Lindsay went on a very impressive tear, and when Freeman returned, his starting spot was gone. Despite this, he still had the best year of his career, rushing for 521 yards and 5 touchdowns. 2019, he spent the entirety of the year backing up Lindsay, but he proved to be a very talented backup and excelled as a pass catcher, recording 43 catches for 256 yards and a touchdown. His final year in Denver came in the 2020 season. He saw a reduced role even more from the year prior with the addition of Melvin Gordon, and despite seeing the field in 16 games, he finished the year with only 35 carries. It was clear that there was no room for Freeman on the Broncos at this point, and he was waived from the team before signing with the Panthers, where he spent 8 games as the team's backup before being released once again during the middle of the 2021 season. He spent the remainder of that year with the Texans, but still wasn't able to get much going. Things also didn't improve much for Freeman in Houston in 2022, where he only saw the field in 4 games and struggled, averaging a career low 2.9 yards per carry. Heading into the 2023 season, he signed with the Rams. He saw his biggest role since 2019, rushing for 319 yards and 2 touchdowns on 77 carries.
Freeman surging forward, and he is in.
The Rams did make a trip to the playoffs, but in Freeman's postseason debut, he did not receive a single carry. This wound up being his final year in the league, and he finished his career with 1,792 yards and 10 touchdowns on the ground. In the 4th round, the Indianapolis Colts selected Najee Hines with the 104th overall pick. Hines proved to be a very well-rounded back and an excellent option as a backup. While he spent almost the entirety of his first season coming off the bench, he did start in 4 games. He ran for 314 yards and a pair of touchdowns, but also pulled in 63 passes for 425 yards and 2 scores.
Right now down 28-10, but driving. Luck throwing towards the end zone. It is caught. Hines, was he in? Yes! Touchdown!
Indianapolis made it all the way to the playoffs, where they took down the Houston Texans 21-7 in the wildcard game, but Hines had to wait till the divisional round to get his first carry. In his matchup, he rushed for 24 yards on just 3 carries. Didn't get much of a chance to impact this game, and the Colts fell 31-13. Hines unfortunately saw his role reduced in 2019 as he continued to be lost in the mix of a deep running back room, including Marlon Mack, Jordan Wilkins, and Jonathan Williams. This was a huge step back from his rookie season, with him averaging just 12.4 yards per game on the ground. He did prove himself as a dangerous return man, though, leading the league with 2 punt return touchdowns. Hines put together a huge bounce back year in 2020. While he once again was only able to start in 2 games, he took full advantage of the opportunities that he was given and posted career highs almost all the way across the board. He ran for 380 yards and 3 touchdowns on 89 carries, setting career highs in all 3 metrics. Along with this, he recorded 63 catches for 482 yards and 4 touchdowns, tying a career high in receptions and setting a single season high in yards and touchdowns. The Colts made a return to the playoffs, taking on the Bills in the wildcard round, and while Hines had a very productive day, rushing for 75 yards on only 6 carries, the Colts were still narrowly defeated 27-24. The following season saw Jonathan Taylor explode, which meant Hines struggled to see the field. He still posted very solid numbers considering his limited role though, but it was clear that he did not have much of a future in Indy. The 2022 season, after a slow start to the year, the Colts traded him to the Bills for Zach Moss and a 2023 6th round draft pick. Hines had only 6 carries during his stint with Buffalo, totaling -3 yards. Even though he was struggling on the ground, Hines continued to thrive in the return game, leading the league with 2 kickoffs returned for touchdowns, impressively returning both of them in the same game. This was also the last game of the season for the Bills, right after Damar Hamlin almost died on the field, so the returns were that much more important.
Pittsburgh and Cleveland, Miami and the Jets were underway as New England decided to defer after winning the toss. The game's going to be played. How will it go? And Hines breaking a tackle and taking it past midfield. This is storybook, an opening kickoff return for Damar Hamlin.
While Hines saw the field in both games of the Bills' postseason run, he was only able to muster 2 catches for 11 yards. Due to the lack of production, this went on to be Hines' final year in the league. He finished his career with 1,202 yards and 10 touchdowns on the ground, along with 1,778 yards and 8 touchdowns as a pass catcher. With the 112th pick, the Cincinnati Bengals selected Mark Walton. Cincinnati already had a running back duo of Joe Mixon and Gio Bernard. Due to this, Walton struggled to see much action, finishing the year with only 14 carries in 14 games.
Just as he was hit from behind, and this is Walton, and Walton out of bounds at midfield.
During the offseason, Walton was released from the Bengals after being arrested 3 times. The first for misdemeanor marijuana possession, the second for battery, and the third for carrying a concealed firearm, resisting an officer without violence, and reckless driving. Despite the lengthy rap sheet that he had over the offseason, the Miami Dolphins ended up signing him. Walton had the best year of his career in 2019. While he only saw the field in 7 games, started in 4 of them, rushed for 201 yards, and recorded 15 receptions for 89 yards. He was waived from the Dolphins following a 4th arrest, being charged with aggravated battery of a pregnant woman. This went on to be his final season in the league, and he finished his career with 235 yards on the ground and 130 yards as a pass catcher. He's continued to face case after case, even after it cost him his NFL career. Next up, we have Ido Smith, who was drafted by the Atlanta Falcons with the 126th overall pick. He spent his rookie season backing up Tevin Coleman. Smith made the most of his limited opportunities though, rushing for 315 yards and 4 touchdowns while also making 27 catches for 152 yards. This wound up being career highs in each statistical category. The following season, he was once again a backup, this time to Devontae Freeman after Tevin Coleman left in free agency. Was putting together a very solid year, averaging 4.8 yards per carry, but he suffered a brutal concussion in week number 7 against the Rams that kept him sidelined the remainder of the year. In the offseason, the Falcons brought in Todd Gurley, but he wound up being very ineffective as a replacement. This opened the door for Smith to shine towards the tail end of the season, and he had a solid few games, but he was never given the starting nod. In the offseason leading up to the 2021 season, the Falcons chose to waive Smith. Midway through the year, he signed with the Cowboys. He saw the field in just 1 game, receiving a single carry that he housed for a 4-yard score.
That is Ido Smith. Ido Smith into the end zone for the touchdown.
This went on to be the final game of his career, and Smith finished his time in the league with 693 yards and 7 touchdowns on the ground, along with 55 receptions for 314 yards through the air. With the 131st pick, the Dolphins selected Kalen Ballage. He spent his rookie season backing up Kenyon Drake and Frank Gore. As a result of these two starting caliber backs in front of him did not get much attention, finishing the year with just 36 carries. With the departure of Gore in the offseason, Ballage moved up to second on the depth chart. He started in 6 of the 12 games that he played in, but wasn't able to do much with the additional workload, averaging just 1.8 yards per carry.
Under center, hands off Ballage up the middle, didn't get in. Yes, he did.
Along with this, he suffered a leg injury that cut his season short after week 13. In the offseason, the Dolphins traded him to the Jets for a 2021 conditional 7th round pick, but he failed the physical and was waived from the team. He wound up signing with the Jets after he was released from Miami. In 3 total games with the Jets, he only received 3 carries before he was cut from the team. Later on in the season, he signed with the Chargers. He had the most successful stretch of his career with the team, starting in 2 out of the 8 games that he played in and picking up 290 yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground.
Here is Ballage, and he's in for the touchdown.
2021, Ballage signed a 1-year deal with the Steelers, mainly being used as a special teams player. The Steelers went on to make the postseason, where they faced off against the Chiefs in the wild card round, where Ballage ran for 13 yards on 4 carries in the 42-21 loss. This would end up being his final NFL game, and he ended his time in the league running for 665 yards and 7 touchdowns. At pick 134, the Arizona Cardinals selected Chase Edmonds. He spent his rookie season backing up David Johnson. Edmonds didn't get much of a chance to prove himself, with only 60 carries on the year that he turned into 208 yards and a pair of scores. The following season, Edmonds was able to sneak into the starting lineup in 2 games, but spent 11 out of the 13 games that he played in coming off the bench.
11-yard run, and now on the delay, it's Edmonds up the middle, still going, he's in.
He saw a very similar workload to the year prior, but was able to do much more with his opportunities this time around, averaging 5.1 yards per carry. In 2020, Kenyon Drake took over as the team's starting back, but Edmonds continued to prove himself as a more than capable second stringer, improving his rushing numbers once again. Along with this, he was a dangerous weapon in the passing game, pulling in 53 passes for 402 yards and 4 touchdowns.
Hands the ball off. Chase Edmonds to the 50 and beyond.
Next year, Edmonds had the strongest season of his entire career. He had finally won over the Cardinals' starting spot, coming off the bench in only 1 out of the 12 games that he played in. He was able to rush for 592 yards and 2 touchdowns, while also continuing to be a force in the passing attack. He played a big role in the Cardinals making a trip to the postseason, where they faced off against the Rams in the wild card round. In his playoff debut, Edmonds was held in check to just 28 yards in the 34-11 loss. With the emergence of James Conner in the 2021 season, Edmonds chose to sign with the Dolphins. He had a short-lived stint with the team, playing just 8 games before he was traded to the Broncos. With the Broncos, Edmonds averaged 4.8 yards per carry for the remainder of the year, but they still chose to waive him at the end of the season. He then quickly signed with the Bucs. Despite opening the year on injured reserve, Edmonds continued to thrive in a backup role. In the postseason, the Bucs took on the Eagles in the wild card round. Did struggle in this one, going for 12 yards on 7 carries, but the Bucs did win in dominant fashion, 32-9. In the divisional round, they faced off against the Lions. Edmonds didn't see much action in this one, ending the 31-23 loss with just 19 yards on 4 carries. 2024, he spent the entirety of the season on IR. So far in his career, he has 1,972 yards and 11 touchdowns on the ground, along with 1,159 yards and 6 touchdowns as a pass catcher. We now move on to the 5th round of the draft, where the Colts selected Jordan Wilkins with the 169th overall pick. Wilkins was a very solid backup during his rookie season, and due to injuries to backs ahead of him on the depth chart, he even slipped into the starting role for 3 games. He finished the season with 336 yards and a touchdown on the ground.
First down and 10, it's a pitch to Wilkins. And Wilkins inside the 10, 5, and he's in, touchdown!
The Colts made the postseason, taking on the Texans in the wild card round, but Wilkins only saw 2 carries that he turned into 9 yards in the 21-7 win. Following week, in the divisional round against the Chiefs, he didn't get a single carry, and they ended up losing 31-13. 2019, despite seeing 9 less carries from the year prior, he made the most out of his opportunities, averaging 6 yards per carry. Finished the season with a career-high 2 rushing touchdowns as well. As for 2020, it was the best of Wilkins' career. Didn't start in any of the 15 games that he played in, but he still ran for 308 yards and a touchdown. What set this season slightly apart from the rest is what he was able to accomplish in the passing game, making 12 catches for 105 yards, marking his first triple-digit receiving season of his career.
Wilkins, can he get in the end zone again? He can!
The following year, Wilkins signed with the Jaguars after being waived from the Colts 5 games into the season. In his 4 collective games with the Jags, he didn't receive a single carry. Then he was signed to the Titans, but also didn't get any playing time there. 2022, he made a return to Indy, but was only able to suit up for 4 games where he saw 13 carries. This marked the final season of Wilkins' career, recording 1,009 yards and 4 touchdowns on the ground during his time in the league. Now we're going to take a look at the 6th round, where the Rams drafted John Kelly Jr. with the 176th overall pick. His rookie year went on to be the best of his entire career, but he struggled to get opportunities to prove himself. Finished the season with 74 yards on 27 carries. The Rams made a trip to the Super Bowl that year, where they were eventually defeated by the Patriots. Kelly unfortunately didn't receive a single carry during that postseason and just barely missed out on that ring as well. Kelly did see his role continue to be reduced in 2019, ending the year with just 3 carries. 2020, he didn't appear in a single game, and it appeared that his time in the league may be coming to an end before it got started. 2021, he signed with the Browns and saw action in 4 games, but was only given 2 rushing attempts. Following year, he played in just 1 game, and in 2023, while he was still signed to Cleveland, he did not see the field during the regular season or in their lone playoff game against the Texans. Now in 2024, Kelly started with the Ravens, where he suited up for 2 games but did not have a single rushing attempt once again. After being released by Baltimore on October 1st, he signed with the Chargers briefly before making a return to the Browns to finish out the year. Currently, Kelly has run for 96 yards on 32 carries during his time in the league. While he hasn't been given a real chance to prove himself at running back at the NFL level, he has proven himself as a talent on special teams that teams have found value in keeping on their roster thus far. Moving on to pick 201, the Saints drafted Boston Scott. While he was drafted by New Orleans, he wound up signing with the Eagles before playing a single snap for the Saints. Scott saw the field in 2 games in his rookie season, but was not given a single carry. He did, however, return some kicks for them. This trend of not getting any offensive playing time continued in the 2 postseason games that the Eagles played in as well. Heading into 2019, he had an incredible offseason, and the coaching staff was finally beginning to take notice of the work that he was putting in. He went on to play in 11 games that year and even started in 2 of them. He proved to be a dangerous weapon both on the ground and in the passing game, rushing for 245 yards and 5 touchdowns, while picking up another 204 yards as a pass catcher. Scott was also returning punts and kicks on special teams. He saw action in the playoffs for the first time in the wildcard matchup against the Seahawks, where he picked up a combined 48 yards of offense, but Philly still fell by a final score of 17-9. The 2020 season went on to arguably be Scott's strongest all-around single-season effort.
Wentz throws, passes, caught, touchdown!
He started in 4 games, rushing for 374 yards and a touchdown, and caught 25 passes for 212 yards and another score. While the Eagles failed to make the playoffs, Scott had comfortably carved out a meaningful role for himself in the offense, as well as keeping his role as Philly's primary kick returner. He had his best rushing season in 2021, where he picked up 373 yards and found the end zone a very impressive 7 times.
3rd and goal. This is Boston Scott, and he is in.
Philadelphia made a return to the postseason, where they took on the Bucs. Scott led all running backs with 34 yards and a touchdown on only 1 carry. But yet again, the Eagles fell 31-15. Scott began to see a bit of a reduced role in 2022, with the Eagles having a loaded running back room of Kenneth Gainwell and Miles Sanders along with Scott, but he was still a talented backup. In the divisional round against the Giants, he picked up 32 yards and a touchdown in the 38-7 win. The Eagles then took another dominant 31-7 victory in the NFC Championship game against the 49ers. Scott was able to contribute once again, rushing for 21 yards and another touchdown. This punched their ticket to the Super Bowl, where they took on the Chiefs. Scott was held in check in this one, unfortunately, for just 8 rushing yards in a matchup that came right down to the wire, culminated in a 38-35 loss for the Eagles. 2023, the acquisition of DeAndre Swift made it very tough for Scott to get involved in the offense, and he was struggling to find some time on the field. If Scott doesn't go on to appear in another game, he's going to finish his career with 1,295 yards and 16 touchdowns on the ground, along with 566 yards and a touchdown as a pass catcher. Side note quickly, Boston Scott is always going to be the giant killer in my eyes, as he scored 10 touchdowns against New York in only 10 games. The next running back up is Trenton Canon, who was selected by the Jets with the 204th pick. Cannon struggled to work his way up the depth chart in his rookie season, much like a lot of these players on this list, but still went on to have the best season of his career. He proved that he had the potential to both be a rusher and a pass catcher, rushing for 113 yards and a touchdown and picking up an additional 144 receiving yards.
First and goal. Cannon into the end zone for the Jets touchdown.
The following season, he was cut out entirely of the offense, not receiving a single carry before he was placed on IR. Leading up to the 2020 season, Cannon was cut from the Jets and signed with the Panthers. While he played in 14 games there was not much room for him in the offense once again. He was able to prove himself as an effective return man at times. After the season ended, he was released from the team and signed with the Ravens, where he only had 2 carries before he was waived once again. It didn't take him too long to find a new home with the 49ers, but he only ran the ball 1 time for a -1 yard in the regular season. Niners actually made a trip to the playoffs, but Cannon only saw action as a part of the special teams unit. During the 2022 season, he spent 2 games with the Titans before suffering a knee injury that effectively put an end to his NFL career. Cannon finished his time in the league with 150 rushing yards and a touchdown, along with 160 receiving yards. Kicking off the 7th and final round in this video, the Denver Broncos selected David Williams with the 226th pick. Williams went on to be released from Denver before playing a single game with the team. He wound up finding his way on the Jaguars, where he went on to play 6 games, mainly on special teams, finishing the season with 36 yards on 8 carries. This went on to be his only season in which he saw the field, ending his time in the league after his rookie year. The Dallas Cowboys selected Bo Scarborough with the 236th pick, but he wound up getting his start with the Lions in the 2019 season. It was a long road to seeing the field for him, not getting a chance to play his entire rookie year. Scarborough made some noise in 2019, rushing for 337 yards and a touchdown, and even starting in 5 out of the 6 games that he played in. Following season, he signed with the Seahawks, but only played in 1 game, which he got 6 carries for 31 yards. This wound up being his final game in the league, finishing his career with 408 yards and a score on the ground. With the 237th pick, Nick Bawden was selected by the Lions. Despite being a running back, Bawden was strictly used on passing downs and on special teams. While he failed to see the field in his rookie year, in 2019 he pulled in 4 passes for 17 yards. He didn't end up seeing the field again until 2021 as a member of the Jets, where he saw a similar role in New York, making just 1 catch in 2021 for 20 yards. Bawden made a return to action for the Jets once again in 2023, this time serving as a fullback while also playing special teams. He made 3 catches for 21 yards and also made the first 2 rushing attempts of his career for 4 yards and a touchdown. The way his career has played out so far, there is no telling if he's going to come back to an active roster. If he doesn't, he'll end his time in the league with 8 catches for 58 yards, 2 carries for 4 yards and a touchdown. Now, the last running back selected in this class of 2018 was Justin Jackson by the Chargers. He made some noise in his rookie season as a backup, rushing for 206 yards and a pair of touchdowns.
Big hole here for Justin Jackson to the end zone. Touchdown.
Made his first playoff debut this season in the wildcard round matchup against the Ravens, where he was held to just 5 yards on a couple of carries in the 23-17 win. Onto the divisional round, they faced off against the Patriots, where Jackson was limited yet again to 4 yards on just 1 carry. The Chargers had their season ended with a 41-28 loss in that game. Jackson's role in the offense was reduced in 2019, but he was still able to average a very impressive career-high 6.9 yards per carry. 2020, he served as the Chargers' second-string running back and was a perfect backup to Austin Eckler, with the two having a very similar skill set. Jackson went on to start in 4 out of the 9 games that he played in that season as well. 2021 marked the best year of Jackson's career. He ran for 364 yards and a pair of touchdowns while also being a threat in the passing game, going for 178 yards on 22 receptions.
Jackson breaks a run, and there he goes! Justin Jackson!
In the offseason, he signed with the Lions leading up to the 2022 season. He had a bit of a reduced role with the Lions as they already featured running backs such as Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift. Following this season, Jackson retired from the league, picking up 1,210 yards and 5 touchdowns on the ground during his career, along with 77 catches for 609 yards through the air. I think it's pretty safe, after looking at all these names on the list, that Barkley was the best out of any running back in this draft class by far. But who was your favorite other than him? Or who do you think the best draft pick was overall in 2018? Let me know in the comment section down below.